name's Jacqueline. I am in Brooklyn right now. I directed When She Speaks back in 2019, and it screened at the festival. And I write and direct, and for my job, I am an editor.
Yeah, my name's Claire Gostin. I directed the movie Limelight. It also screened at, 2020 NFFTY. I'm a writer-director. I think I tend to be pulled towards female-centered dramas, ideally with a hint of comedy. Currently freelance direct and I can, but I also started working as a director's assistant back in February of this year. Transitioned into a post assistant, which has been very informative. But yeah, I would just love to hear, When She Speaks involves like so much research, I imagine. I would just love to hear like kind of where those ideas came from and how the story came about.
It was my thesis film at Florida State. And I would say for a while, I was like, my previous film was like very personal, and I kind of wanted to try and like step out of my comfort zone and do something that like I haven't done before and experiment with like, doing a period piece and things like that. I thought it was like a really exciting challenge. And I guess I was just like, yeah, this seems like an important story to tell. And I feel like even based in the 1920s, there's still a lot of like themes that I think just still exist today. And that was also interesting to me to see like the parallels of, like gaslighting and things like that. Like obviously it's been going on forever and still it goes on today. So yeah, the research required, it was a lot. It's like 1920s magazine online. It was like an old magazine, and they had stuff about like just the whole process of like the maternity ward, midwives. It was a lot of research. But I honestly enjoyed it because it was so cool to learn and really dive deep into something that I had no idea. Yeah, I just was kind of driven by just the fact that it was a true story, and to be able to kind of bring that to life as best as I could, as most accurate as I could, was a challenge. But like it was very gratifying too. And
I feel like one thing when watching your movie is like, for me, that was most devastating, and I think most effective clearly was the fact that like not only was she being convinced of her like delusionment by her husband, it was also like all these women around her, which I was like, oh my god, you would just hope so badly that like one of these women would stick up for her, but that didn't happen. And like there was no one in the room who stood up for her. That's more of a comment than a question, but I guess just like if you want to like speak to that, I'm just so curious how you came to the decision to not give her a single ally in the room.
The feeling of her being completely alone and helpless without any, like she kind of lost control over the situation, even though it was like her baby, her pregnancy. For me, I don't know, I feel like that was just, it might have been the situation back at the time. There's no way to truly know the details, but I think her being driven to like this delusion was definitely helped by eventually, I'm sure, not that she's actually delusional, but as time went on, like everyone is telling her that she's wrong and that she's crazy. And, so I feel like it just makes someone like lose control, and it's just a terrifying thing. But tell me a little bit more about your film. Like, where did you come up with this idea, and like what inspired you? And also, where did you shoot?
Well, so Limelight, for story credit, I owe it all to our writer. Her name's Anna Telfer. She actually has family who's from the Republic of Congo, who currently lives there. So she had the opportunity to visit the country's capital, Congo Brazzaville, back in late 2015 or into early 2016, around the time when there was basically a constitutional referendum that allowed their current president to run for another term, even though he'd been in office for about like 30 years. So it's practically a dictatorship. But at that point, she was like spending a lot of time around young people in Brazzaville, and just kind of noticed this like simmering dissent towards President Sassou at the time, and really decided to write a story that doesn't focus necessarily on the politics, but is more about just these young people trying to live and like,
right.
having experiences while there's kind of this chaos going around them and what that's like. But it was all shot in LA, which was quite a challenge.
Wow.
Yeah, so I was an undergrad at USC at the time, and we're not really allowed to travel or anything. You kind of have to shoot within I think it's like a 50-mile radius of the school or something. So everything was in LA. So a lot of pressure was on our production designers and our costume designer, Julianne Fox. She did so much research. Actually, the whole team was in pretty much constant contact with this assistant professor from USC. His name's Brett Carter, I believe. He was actually in Congo Brazzaville at the time. He kind of conducted his whole thesis on political relations in Congo Brazzaville. So he was like a major resource for us. But they were in constant, I was like CC'd on an email chain with them. They were just like in constant contact with him, being like asking him all these questions and like sending him photos and everything. And he was sending photos back because he was there. So like a really incredible resource. But yeah, I guess that relating, when you have limited money and you have a heavy production design challenge in front of you, how do you go about pulling that off, and kind of how does that look different than if you had no limits in your budget for production design?
Right. I would say definitely a lot of, I don't know if I should say this, but buying and returning stuff.
Yes, I agree.
That was definitely a strategy. And I would say the community in Tallahassee, where I go to school, is like very open to, student filmmakers, because they know about the film school, open their locations and things like that to us for free. So, I mean, that was definitely a huge help. The first scene where she's in the house, like that's like a preserved historic building right in our town. And then we also filmed somewhere in Georgia. But I would say obviously like being a student helps with locations. I would say it was a lot of borrowing. Like there was so many people we would reach out to people that had all these, vintage props, like the telephone or the car that slides by. Honestly, like a lot of really nice people that are so open to basically letting you borrow their things. So like, I would say a lot of it just had to do with the kindness of the people around us in the community.
I would say one thing too I found with like production design is like, especially when it's a limited budget, is like you have to be so, and I don't know if you feel similar about this, but like you have to be so specific about, you have to know ahead of time like pretty much exactly what angles you're going to shoot, because like your designers only have a certain amount of money to like fill that space. Like, I mean, for example, if you like in our garden sequences in Limelight, if you like were to turn the camera around, like it's someone's house. Like it's like if you were to turn the camera like 10 degrees more to the left, like the end of the wall is there. It's like we only had the money to fill a certain amount of space, and that had to be so like premeditated beforehand so that everyone knew what we had to shoot, and like no one was like throwing in any surprises of like, oh well, what if we shot it that way? And then the production designers are like, oh well, we didn't prepare for that. And I'm so curious to hear, I would love to hear about kind of the format of your thesis class, because I think every school's is different and it's so fascinating. I think ours was, I think at first it was like very, honestly, that feedback was very overwhelming for me. I was like, I mean, we had like probably like 30 kids in our, like students in our thesis class, and then probably I think like 10 faculty members.
Right.
And like, that's a lot of feedback to like sort through. And especially when you're kind of like every weekend, you put out 110% of your effort, and like, it's very stressful and it's rewarding at the same time, but you put a lot into like what you shoot, and then you screen your dailies and it just kind of feels like people are almost picking them apart. And like, I think it took me a while to realize, oh no, that's very valuable. Like, I think that's something that doesn't exist outside of film school, is that constant feedback. After a while, I think you learn to process it, and you learn to like, you're able to kind of figure out what notes to take and what not to take.
Right.
I'm curious to hear if it was different for you.
Yeah, it was basically a similar thing. I don't think we ever showed dailies, but we did have cut screenings. I think we had 2 cut screenings throughout the whole editing process, and also like our post-production cycle is like pretty quick too. I think it was like 2 to 3 weeks maybe. The whole program kind of works where we all basically take turns doing different positions and working on all of each other's movies. Being close with your collaborator and, you know, just having a good friendship, I think is important.
There were so many times for Limelight. I mean, it kind of just felt like any production challenge that could have gone wrong did go wrong. And it's like when you're trying to like focus on what you have to shoot and then stuff goes wrong. I mean, having people on your team who are incredibly supportive is such a game changer. Like, yeah, having people, and I think that's what's also great about film school is like you have people who are also there to learn and like make the most out of an experience. And
exactly,
when they happen to be very supportive of you at the same time, it's like, you know, makes a world of difference. This is honestly great because I would love to talk to you about working with actors. But for Bria and Didier, like our two main characters, we held auditions for a couple of months, and then we narrowed it down for each role to about like 3 different actresses. We had them come in for a chemistry read together, and they both like walked into the room and they were like, oh my god, hey, like, hi. And apparently they knew each other. They had like they both actually also went to USC, which blew my mind. They both went through the film program, but were also actors. Like they both love to act. And the minute that happened, the minute we realized like they knew each other, it added a whole nother layer. And there was so much like pre-existing comfort in between the two of them that
I sense that too, definitely.
Which was a dream for me. It made my job so much easier. And then like from there on, it was just, you know, nitpicky of like, oh, well, let's hit this certain emotion, or let's like push things this direction or further in this way. But yeah, no, for you, I mean, one thing I noticed is, I mean, your main characters, like, I mean, under like extreme emotional duress, like in pretty much every scene. And like, how do you handle that? How do you make sure that, you know, she's giving her best performance without, you know, exhausting her, you know, keeping your actor like comfortable and, you know, in a good place, but also pushing them to a good performance?
Specifically, that reminds me of being in the operating room scene. When she finds out that she's going to have cesarean section. And so that scene, well, basically all the scenes that were very emotional and high energy, I like didn't want to like keep doing them over and over again. Like once I was like satisfied, I feel like it was like I knew it and I was like, okay, like because there's obviously stuff on the day. But also the way we scheduled it, I think was really important. So I think it was intentional where we had those high scenes. Like we're not going to have the most crazy scene at the end of the day where she's all tired. Like we want to do it, you know, like get them in the mode, like do a couple other different scenes or shots first, and then basically ideal time, you know, to do it.
How do you, because for me, it's always tough to know like when we got it, like when we're in the edit room, we're not going to have any regrets about like, oh, we should have gotten a different performance. How do you as a director kind of, you know, gauge when you're good, like when like you've helped your actor get to the best performance and to the right performance for the scene?
So when people told me like when I'm like at the director's monitor, like I don't notice what I'm doing, but I'm literally like acting out the emotions that I want. I'm like either smiling or like upset, like without me even noticing. I feel like I just get very in tune with like the performance and what's going on.
Yeah.
Kind of like out everything, and I'm literally like at the screen, like, you know, like really just trying to feel connected to the performance and the character.
It's like you become their stage mom a little bit. I think we're like we're at the monitor like a cheerleader, but we're feeling everything. Yeah. We're very emotionally invested.
Next, and also like how have you managed to, or are you struggling to kind of like stay creative, move on to your next project? Like how's that process going for you?
It's definitely tough. I feel like what film school gives you is deadlines, and it's like and in the moment that's very stressful, but I think I miss having a lot of deadlines. But so I do try to recreate that for myself as much as possible. Like, oh, like by the end of the week I will have like, you know, a draft of this done or something. So right out of graduation, it was very difficult to like stay creative, but with a few of my friends, we formed like a writers group, and it was every Sunday we met. It was like, okay, what have you been working on? Where are you going from here? And I still do that now with a few friends. So that's been very helpful. It's such a collaborative medium that when all of a sudden, like, we weren't allowed to like be around people and like work with people, that's difficult when you find like a lot of inspiration and a lot of your drive from the people around you. I mean, I would also love to know, what is the first project that made you fall in love with filmmaking?
It's a great question. I mean, I've been doing it for so long, since I was, I don't know, 10 years old, like making music videos. And I honestly wouldn't say there was one specific project. Like, I think I have all this like archive of all these different, just different files from like 2009. And I was watching some of them, and you could just like, and it's like me trying to make this like short, and you could hear my voice in the background being like, no, do this. Like, I think I just like was drawn to directing, like without even knowing what it really was, and just being like, this feels right. That's the thing. Like, I really love the whole kind of like intuitive nature that comes with being young and making something, opposed to now where it's like, it's great to be educated, but you know, you find the balance of like thinking too much and like not thinking enough, you know what I mean? So yeah, how about you?
Yeah, I mean, oh my God, I was like, I feel like you become way more self-conscious as you get older, but like when I was like first making movies, like, I mean, I didn't have a script. Like, I didn't know how to write a script. Like, I just went out and in the moment was like thinking of things, and somehow it all came together. Thinking about that now, that stresses me out so much. The fact that I was so unprepared, like I would never be able to do that now. But when I was like in 8th grade, that's, you know, all you know how to do. But yeah, I would say I didn't know that you could like be a director. I didn't know like you could like, I mean, I'm from like a small town in Washington State. Like, no one really does that. Like, I didn't really know that. So I mean, I kind of started in like every other art form, I would say. Like, I was really involved in dance, like from a very young age. And then I started writing like short stories, and I was just a very avid reader growing up and thought I wanted to be a novelist. And that's not where I ended up going. But, and then I got into photography like my freshman year of high school, I think. And I think that was like the first time I realized, oh, you can actually tell stories like through images. And I can do that. That's not only for other people. And then I think probably the first project for me was, I think going into my sophomore year of high school, I went to like a really small like video production camp. But it was just like a group of 5 of us just like running around campus, just like shooting random like images and like acting in the music video. And we had so much fun. And I think from there, like after that, I like told my parents, I was like, oh, I want to go to film school. Like, and they're like, oh, okay. Like, that was like new for them. It's just so crazy, like thinking back now, like you just made whatever you wanted to make. Like, it was like, and it didn't feel like anyone was like watching, which was like, I think it's a good thing and a bad thing. Like, now it feels like more, now that you're out of school, like anything you make, people are going to have to watch. And like, that's great, because then you want people to watch your work. But then at the same time, it's like, you have to make sure that everything you do is like your best foot forward. Whereas in high school, no one was really watching. So you just kind of made whatever you wanted to make.
You want people to watch. Like, I remember like writing out the YouTube link on a piece of paper and like handing it out to people.
Yeah.
So now I'm like, nobody watched now.
Like, oh my God. Yeah. Now I'm like, let it be like everything about it be perfect before you watch, which is not always how it should be.